Hello, my friends in the UK, guys. My dad was actually born in the UK. Just thought I'd stick that out there. I have British citizenship. Not much of a Viking, am I? Although I guess a bunch of Vikings did land in the UK, did invade the UK, and well, Xpeng's invading the UK as well. I've got an Xpeng G6 that's now on sale in the UK. I'm going to tell you which model I think you should buy, or at least tell you what I've bought and what I think would be the better buy. The new G6 is now available in the UK in two versions. There's the standard range version, and then there's the long range version. Of course, the prices are a little different, but here are the prices and the details, and here's what you should look out for. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. Great to have you with us. Here in Australia, the Xpeng G6, they had a deal for a little bit. It was 10 years warranty and 10 years on the battery as well. That's crazy, right? That's pretty damn awesome if you ask me. Now, the G6, I've had it now. I've driven probably about 6,000, 7,000 kilometers, including a road trip from Newcastle down to Melbourne, not Newcastle in the UK. Guys, I want to tell you a story actually about when I was riding around the world with my wife. We got a ferry from the Netherlands to Newcastle in the UK. And we'd been asking, we hadn't been in English-speaking countries for many, many months. It was more than 6 months. Yeah, it was probably about 7 months. We hadn't been in an English-speaking country. We've been in lots of countries. And you get used to asking if the person speaks English, like in a store. So I get off the ferry. I'm really tired. It was bad weather. It was just up and down all night, and I'm terrible with seasickness, so I felt horrendous. Barely slept. Got on my bike. We got on our bikes, and we rode to McDonald's to have breakfast. This was the first place we found when we got off the ferry. Went in there, and the lady started talking to me, and I said, "Oh, sorry, excuse me, just wondering if you speak English." And then I realized that she was speaking English. She just had an incredibly thick accent. And I got a bit embarrassed about that. And she just pretended that I'd never said it. So, yeah, that was nice of her to do that. Anyhow, the G6. I have the long range version, right? I have the version with the 87 kilowatt hour battery. It has 570 kilometers of range. So it's got a fair bit of range. And because it charges so quickly, for me, it's a great combination for long road trips. It's got 290 kilowatt fast charging. So you can charge the battery in around about 20 minutes from, 10 to 80%. I found that is accurate in the real world. It really does charge that fast in the real world. And that means that if you love road trips, that's the perfect car for you. But the UK is not a very big country. It's really not. I mean, it doesn't take long to get from one end of the UK to the other. So you might not need that version. The starting price for the standard range version, which might be a good option for you, is $49,885 US dollars. 39,990 Great British pounds, Great British pounds, I should say. So 40,000 pounds. It's way more expensive than what it is here in Australia. But of course, that's to do with your taxes. We don't have any taxes on Chinese cars in Australia. So that's the main reason. But here in Australia, it's 55,000 Australian dollars. So it's really probably about 27,000 pounds here in Australia. I mean, it's so much cheaper. But anyhow, I mean, like I said, it's because of taxes. Similar price to a Tesla Model Y. The entry-level G6 gets a 190 kilowatt rear-wheel driven motor, 255 horsepower, 270 miles of range. That's 435 kilometers. Has about, I believe, about 220 kilowatt fast charging. March deliveries. So you can get that right now. For context, in China, the price for that model is 28,000 US dollars, or maybe $28,000. That's US dollars. So that gives you an idea of just how good the prices are in China. Now, if you want to pay a little bit more, you can get the long range version. And the price of the long range version is 56,000 US dollars. That's 45,000 pounds. Context here in Australia, it's 60,000 Australian dollars. So around about 23,000 pounds. It's like nearly half the price. So you can see why I bought them. I mean, they're incredibly good value here in Australia. Now, that model, though, does get a bit more power, the long range version. It has 230 kilowatt and I believe about 450 newton meters. And it gets that bigger battery pack. It's an 87.5 kilowatt hour battery, giving you 354 miles of range, 570 kilometers. That's pretty much the only difference between the long range and the standard range versions. $6,000 difference in price. Pretty big difference. Here in Australia, the difference in price is only 5,000 Australian dollars. So it's only about a $3,000 difference in price here. You're paying double the difference versus what we pay in Australia to upgrade from the standard range to the long range. I think the standard range in the UK is the better buy. You don't need huge amounts of range in the UK. 435 kilometers, I think, would be enough. 270 miles would be enough in the UK. That's the model that I would personally buy in the UK. Not a huge country. I think that would be fine for you. And the charging speed's definitely good enough. Now, there is an all-wheel drive version that's coming to Australia. It might be coming to the UK as well. It's the same as the long range version, but it just gets two motors. It has a total of 358 kilowatt, which is 480 horsepower. Now, it won't be initially available yet, but it might be in the future. So other than that, what can I tell you? Well, it's exactly the same size as a Tesla Model Y. Pretty much identical in terms of within a millimeter. Seriously, it's crazy. Boot space, it's 570 litre boot. It's got a slightly smaller boot than a Model Y, but much more room in the back seat. So, that gives you kind of the trade-off. The boot space for me is actually pretty good. I found it to be a pretty good size. When the boys and I've gone surfing, we've put down one of the seats in the back and we can still fit like 7-foot boards in the back of the car, which is pretty damn good if you ask me. Now it comes with 20-inch rims. I actually think it would be better if it came with 19-inch rims. You'd get more range, but that's what it comes standard with here in Australia as well. It has two 50-watt wireless charging pads at the front of the car. They work really well. It has a 10.2-inch LCD instrument cluster, 15-inch main screen. It's got pretty nice headlights. I use the headlights. I put them on high beam all the time. And of course, I have them so that they'll turn off if someone's driving. And I find it works really well. Some cars, if you have that auto high beam on, they don't work that well. So you'll be driving along and you're just high beaming someone. You're like, oh, sorry, mate, sorry. You're trying to find the switch to turn it off, but it works really well. So I find the headlights are really, really good. What are some other, positives and negatives? Okay, ventilated seats, they're excellent. The ventilated front seats, they have heating and cooling. Really, really, I love those ventilated seats. The back is just heating, no ventilation in the back, but that's pretty normal for pretty much all cars. The media screen works really well. I've had other cars, MGs, where the media screen, I'm like having to smash it to try and get it to work. Multiple cars that I've tested, media screens don't work that well. Zeekr and Xpeng, I found their media screens work really, really well. You don't have to press twice. It just works the first time. The other thing I found is the seats. It took me maybe a couple of drives to get used to them, but I found them to be quite comfortable, and they have 8-way power adjustment and 4-way lumbar support. They also have a really cool meditation setting in the car, which I've used a fair bit now, and I'm getting used to starting to try and meditate a bit more, which is good. I'm usually a bit too maybe stressed, I guess you could say. So I really like the meditation system. It's got music. There's different options. There's about 8 different meditation options you can go through. There's one that's a guided meditation in the car. It puts the music on for you, and the music bounces around the 16-speaker sound system. You can hear like birds from one side of the car. You can hear birds from the other side, the trees crackling from this side and from that side. It really feels like you're in the forest. You just close your eyes, and if you don't want to close your eyes, you can watch the screen because it shows you the forest and the rain. And then they've got a beach one. I think it's a fantastic idea, and other car manufacturers should do it as well. Now, the speakers are not 16 speakers. I was wrong. It's actually an 18-speaker sound system with 960-watt audio. The best way to experience that sound system, if you want to test the car, is put on the meditation system, and it'll show you how those speakers all really work. So who's going to be selling the G6 in the UK? Well, a company called International Motors Limited, IML. They'll be the Xpeng dealer in the market, and they plan on opening 20 stores this year. Now, 20 is quite a lot for a place the size of the UK. So clearly they're pretty serious about selling the brand. Are you going to be comfortable buying an Xpeng vehicle in the UK? Well, I personally would. I mean, I'm comfortable buying one here in Australia. And obviously we have more car brands from China here in Australia than you guys have in the UK. But I would feel comfortable. I mean, the G6 Xpeng are planning for 50% of their global sales to be outside of China. And they're planning a swathe of models that are going to be international right-hand drive for markets like the UK, for Australia, for Japan, for Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, right-hand drive. So there'll be the G9 will be right-hand drive, the X9 will be right-hand drive, the P7 Plus will be right-hand drive, the Mona will be right-hand drive. There is no other Chinese car manufacturer that I know of making that many electric cars in right-hand drive. So really, Xpeng are ideally set up. IML Motors, or whatever they're called, their distributor in the UK, they'll have their pick of models. They won't have to beg. This is what happens, right? Car manufacturers are like, please make it in right-hand drive. We really want this car. And then the car brand of Ford or whoever else, I'll say, nah, your market's not big enough for us to get lost. We're not going to do it. That's so common. Like, you guys know about that. It's so common. But obviously, Xpeng have already committed to right-hand drive for pretty much almost every, I think, actually every model, which is no one else has done that. That gives you a bit of confidence that they do plan on sticking around. So guys, that's my pick. The standard range for the UK market. It's been a good car for me. Is there any negatives? To be honest, the app, I have had a couple of issues lately with the app. The charging cable getting stuck to the car. And the reason for that is my wife will stick the charging cable in when the app is connected to her. And then I'll go out to the car to disconnect it, and it's still connected to her, and I can't disconnect it. We've had that happen a few times. That might be a fault on our end, on something we've got to do. I'm not sure. That's about the only negative I can think of, to be honest. Everything else. No, one other thing. The cruise control, when you're going around a corner, I like to drive fast around corners. Not crazy fast, but, fast enough. And the cruise control doesn't like it. It slows me down around corners. If that doesn't matter to you, then, go right ahead. As I mentioned before, it's been a great car and I'm very happy with it. Now, let me know your thoughts, guys, in the comments. And thanks for watching. Bye-bye.